Today we're talking about religion and evil and what is the real meaning of evil. What has done the most good and the most bad in the world. And, you know, it's interesting how religion has killed so many people. That's just the truth. I'm not anti-religious. I'm not opposed to faith. I think there's so much beauty and amazing philosophy to be gained from Christianity and from really any religion out there. I say Christianity because that's my background. But the truth is, rivers of blood have been spilled in the name of God as well. And to deny that is to ignore the obvious truth that religion has been a very dangerous thing throughout the entire recorded history of the world. I saw a comic and the devil was laying out on a chair talking to a psychiatrist, and he said that God killed millions of people over a piece of fruit, and they say I am the bad guy. I thought that was kind of interesting, but it's sort of true. Think about the Genesis story of the fall from grace, the Garden of Eden. You have the forbidden apple, right? Well, it's not an apple. It's the forbidden fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. But as the story goes, God said you can do whatever you want. You can eat of any fruit in the garden, but you can't eat this one particular fruit that is born by the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Because if you eat of that fruit, then you will surely die. And Adam took the fruit and he ate it and he gave it to Eve, and they fell from grace. And so began, according to Christian lore, the long journey of humanity through a legacy of sin, which would continue on, bringing blight upon us. But there's a lot of content in the Bible about the wrath of God. There's a lot of brutality in the Bible. For example, there's the story of, I believe, Abraham, and he has his son, and God says, take your boy up the mountain and burn him alive as a sacrifice to me. And Abraham takes his son up there. He says, come on, boy, we're going to go for a hike. And his son says, you know, it's kind of weird you didn't bring any animal for a burnt sacrifice. And his dad says, that's all right, son. God will provide a sacrifice for us. But what he didn't tell his son was that his son was in fact a sacrifice. Anyways, as the story goes, he goes up the mountain and he ties up his boy up there. He's getting ready to burn him to death. And then God gives him a ram at the last minute that he can sacrifice instead. And it's a kudos to Abraham for having faith to do what he's told, even when he's asked to give up something very dear to him. And that's an interesting story. It's also interesting to think that that we would say that a God that we say is intrinsically good, the absolute definition of good, would ask somebody to commit murder in his name. And then people will say, oh, well, that was the Old Testament, you know. It's different now, because after Jesus came, then a new law was made, a law of hope and forgiveness and all of those things. That's interesting. Interesting that a God that is of essentially infinite quality, end the same, never changing, eternal in the heavens, this God somehow, somewhere around 2,000 years ago, totally changed his tune because he sent his son to die. Okay. You know, like the more you think about it, it's kind of like lore. It's kind of like Elder Scrolls Online lore. Like, it makes a lot of sense until you think very much about it. And then you think, what did I just hear? I don't even know what I'm looking at here. But you know, a lot of people have killed each other for this, and I am 100% for appreciating the beauty of Christian tradition and teachings and the values of Christianity and a lot of things that I really love about it. But it's also true that Christianity, as many other religions in their pure form, have killed a lot of people. Now, there's also something to be said for the fact that liberals kill people. Now let's elaborate on that, because there's this notion. People say, oh, well, there is no God. You know, how can you be such a fool to believe in a fairy tale God up in the sky? And they will say, well, you know, let's rid the world of all of these ignorant people who believe in things that are stupid and dangerous. And then they start trying to censor people. They start trying to control people. They start saying you shouldn't be able to practice your faith freely. They start to look for ways to suppress what they think is evil. They start trying to control people because there's a certain tribe of people who believe that they're enlightened, and when they think they're enlightened, they believe that that entitles them to play God in the lives of other people. It's sort of like these folks who say that there's global warming, climate change, sustainability crisis, and there's actually people out there who believe that we should essentially end the human race so that we can do what's right for the planet. There's people who believe that genocide would be preferable over allowing the planet to be overrun by what they see as essentially a toxic parasite. And to that I say, if you believe that human beings are a problem, if you think that people are something you should look at, like bugs or insects that should be extinguished or controlled through some sort of mitigation technique, then you're pushing another version of that same old, tired, religious fanaticism, the bizarre desire to try to extinguish anything that's different than your own perspective. And it doesn't really make a difference whether you believe that you're going to be the bully club hand of God representing the power of God on earth, or if you believe that in some odd sense, because you don't believe in God, that entitles you to be God. But that desire for power, or the desire to be an extension of some abstract power, those two forces, whether it's the force of humanism or the force of religion, they've all killed a lot of people and done a lot of harm to free people, because they both stem from that same belief that our duty is to control other people. Now, what's interesting about all this is Think about the devil now. Think about demons and think about all the fearful monsters you might see in a video game. How many people have they killed throughout history? How much bad have they done? And I'll tell you, yeah, there's probably a few Satan worshipers out there that have done some sort of ridiculous evil in the name of their religion. But for the greater part, we don't have a major problem with people who worship the devil doing a lot of harm in the world. There actually aren't very many people who do worship the devil, for one thing. See, the thing is, those big monsters, the hideous creatures that live in the underworld, physically, they really don't exist. In philosophy and games, they're symbolic of something. They represent an idea of something nefarious, but they don't really exist in reality. So all of those evil things, the face of evil as we'd imagine it, the frightening boogeyman, doesn't really exist. And that's kind of the crux of the point I'm getting at, that the people who do the most evil in the world are usually people who, for one reason or the other, believe that they know the truth, and they believe that they know better than anyone else what that truth is and what it looks like. And they believe that anything that doesn't align with their perception of the truth, whether it's their religion or their politics, they believe that it's a threat and it needs to be fought against. And to them, that is the devil. That is the evil that they fight against. And quite often, they will ascribe a fearful appearance to those things to represent this caricature of darkness, because if you put a frightening mask on something, then people will rally against it. And that could be somebody who says if you don't devote your life to Jesus, you're going to go burn in hell forever. Or it could be a climate change activist that says that if everybody doesn't start driving electric cars next year, then humanity's going to go extinct by 2030 or something, right? It's all just the same basic idea repackaged. But evil doesn't really exist, not in the sense of looking evil. Real evil is innocuous. Real evil is ordinary looking. Real evil is just all of people's shenanigans that they engage in. Evil is apathy sometimes, and other times evil is an obsession with doing good and making a difference, even if people don't want you to do that in their lives, the desire to force it on them. So I think there's a real case for tolerance and for respect there. But the final point I wanted to make was that philosophy hasn't really harmed anybody. Agnosticism hasn't really harmed anybody. Eastern religions that are very much about focusing on yourself and using spirituality as a way to explore your own place in the universe, not to tell others how to interpret their experience, but to more wisely and more peacefully pursue your own path. Those kinds of religions that are more a worldview, a philosophy than a religion, that are more internal facing and personal improvement focused than about trying to control other people. Those kinds of philosophies, they have not harmed people very much at all. You won't find a lot of philosophy that does harm, And the point I'm getting at is that when you think about things for yourself freely, and then you try to interpret that in a way that works for you, and then you try to apply the lessons that you've learned from your contemplation in your own personal life, that aligns very much with the Wiccan Rede, to do what you will, but do no harm to anyone. And that should be our attitude. Now, we shouldn't be trying to extinguish ideas that are different than our own. We should see beauty in all of those different things, even if they include some elements of darkness or evil. And we also shouldn't be afraid of overt evil, all those things that maybe seem like the face of evil. Well, they're not really going to hurt us, because they're just caricatures. They're masks. The real evil of the world is usually masked in a desire to do good. And the truth of good in the world is usually obscured by the fact that the best people you'll ever meet are the ones who keep to themselves and don't really tell you what to do or what to think, and they accept you for who you are, and they're at peace with themselves and at peace with the world around them. So that should be the kind of people that we want to be. And whenever you're tempted to go on some sort of wild tangent and say, well, you have to believe this certain way, and if you don't, then you're going to be lost, we should avoid those sorts of attitudes, because whether they come from a political perspective or they come from a religious perspective, all of the evil in the world that has destroyed lives and destroyed societies and destroyed cultures and set humanity backwards have usually been born of people that are obsessed with doing good, even if it means compromising their principles for the sake of what they believe to be the greater good. I've been thinking a bit more about the Lord of the Rings lately, and one trope that I think is so amazing and so true about the Lord of the Rings is this notion of power corrupting people. And there's these rings, and when somebody puts the ring on, they have some kind of power given to them. That's the story. But they also lose the ability to have the power to surrender their power. As soon as they put that ring on, the ring corrupts them, and they can't take that ring off again many times. And they wither away, bound in chains to the allure of power. And I think there is no greater addiction to power than that belief that you are right and everyone else is wrong, and it's your duty and your responsibility to set everybody else on the right track, whether they like it or not. That's a sort of a corruption. To not be able to surrender the desire to control other people in some way. And that's something we should be on guard for. Being too sure that we are right. I think there's a lot of truth in the fact that when things feel easy, we usually should practice constraint. And when they feel hard, we probably would do well to do those things. You know, I saw a post by someone on Quora. They said, "I'm 37 years old, never been married, have no kids. What is the point even of living?" And I thought that kind of resonates a little with me because, you know, I'm divorced, 36, And, here I am. In some ways having the best time of my life, and in some ways thinking, wow, what do you do? In any case, I thought about that question, and I didn't really look at it too much more, but it stuck to me a little bit. And I thought, it's interesting how there's also people who are busy with their careers, busy with their families. They got everything, every box you could possibly check, they've got it. And they're still asking that same question, though. What's the point? Because you're not going to find your spouse. You're not going to have kids. You're not going to have anything that is going to fulfill you. Not really. There's not any box you can check that's going to make you realize that you have achieved fulfillment in your life. Now, certainly all those things, they can be blessings in your life. Don't get me wrong. They can be great. It's better to be in a happy situation in your life than in a challenging one. It's better to have companionship than to live your life completely as an island alone. There's a lot of different things that are better. It's better to have money than to be completely broke, too. But if you think that there's a dollar amount that's going to buy happiness, or you think that there's any external thing that can give you happiness or peace or tranquility or purpose, there isn't. The answer is that you have to stop looking outside yourself for validation, and you have to look inside. Now, there's all kinds of things we can do that are interesting. I'm interested in what's going to happen in the next political election. I'm interested in what's happening on the other side of the world. I'm interested in what's happening with my finances. I'm interested in new games that are coming out soon. I'm interested in so many different things in life. But I also know that life is good as it is, that life is complete as it is, that I really don't need to change anyone's mind or rewrite any course of history. And so here's the truth. We each have a time to live and a time to die. There's different seasons of our lives. There's the springtime and the summer and the fall and the winter. And then we are returned to the dust, and we are reborn once again in myriad different forms. And we don't really understand what it all means. But our existence is proof that we are part of something greater than ourselves. But we don't really have to be in control of that in order to be part of a greater whole. And that's comforting. It's comforting when you stop trying to understand and master everything. And then going back to those principles of peace in the world, well, think about the philosophies that do harm, and then think about the ones that do good. And you'll find that quite often the best way to have a philosophy that's conducive to peace in the world is to embrace a philosophy that makes you at peace with yourself. That's why, if I was going to tell you what philosophies are the most intriguing to me, despite my love of Christianity and a lot of Western values, I'd probably have to say something in the ballpark of Buddhism or something like that. A bit more of a Stoicism. Because when you focus on having a meditative experience in life, more you practice that, the more you learn. You don't win the battle and then find peace afterwards. You find peace right now. And then it doesn't really matter what the battle's outcome is. Though when you are at peace with yourself, you are also more likely to pick battles you can win, and you're more likely to win them. So, be at peace with all things in your life. Embrace a diversity of different ideas, but don't necessarily become obsessed with any one of them. And realize that the greatest evil is often masked by what seems to be the strongest desire to do good. Things which appear evil aren't necessarily the greatest evil. A lot of things which appear to be good are actually the root of evil. Sort of like people that win the lottery. You'd think it's the best thing ever. And it actually might do them more harm than good. Because now they got something that they didn't earn, and they wind up getting in more trouble with it than good. It's good to have a loose handle on life. They say if you get sucked up into a big storm like a hurricane or something, the best thing you can do is to relax. Don't worry too much. Don't fight against it. Just relax, and you're more likely, maybe, to be unharmed. I don't know if that's true or not, but I do think there's something to be said for the fact that when you aren't obsessed with being in control, things are more likely to just fall into place. As always, good luck on your adventure. Till next time, thanks for watching.